Let the shadows fall upon the lands between, as we chase the fleeting light of Mikola and discover the horrors that lie in his wake. Hello everyone, and welcome to a boss difficulty ranking for every Remembrance boss in Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. From Software was cooking for 2 years to create this expansion, and they certainly delivered. With an amazing new world and a story that Vadi Vidya could turn into a beautiful video essay, Shadow of the Erdtree just elevates an already near perfect game further up the quality rankings when compared to other games of the type or of this era. For me at least, the main highlight of this DLC are the boss fights. After we saw Mesmer for the first time, the majority of us immediately marked him on our to kill list, and there's a lot of other bosses to fight alongside him. So how do they stack up in terms of difficulty? We're here to find out. I've already ranked every major boss in the game so far, and now I'm back for the rest. Before we begin though, I need to make an important announcement. Level your fucking blessings! Erdtree blessings are introduced in the DLC, and they are by far the most important collectible. Whatever your level, whatever your build, whatever your stats, unless you have Erdtree blessings, it all counts for basically nothing. Unless you're that guy. They modulate your attack power and your damage resistance while in the Shadow Realm, which are both very important. These things are scattered throughout the Shadowlands, some of them obvious and some of them more hidden than my self-esteem, and you'd better collect them throughout your journey. Miyazaki is no longer asking. I can't remember the blessing level I was at for a few of the bosses, but when I do and it's notable, I'll call it out. And of course, this boss ranking is based solely off of my own difficulty experience. Now, after a long time waiting, let's finally dive back into Elden Ring. Number 11, Erdtree Avatar. We spent all of Elden Ring fighting copy-pasted Erdtree avatars, so of course there'd be one in the DLC. Instead of an obese tree man though, we now fight a giant sunflower. It's got some thrashing, some bashing, some charges, and a lot of thorns that cause a lot of bleed build-up, and that final attack is the only one that I consider a proper threat. It takes decent damage to the stalk, but much more damage to the face, so it's better to prioritize waiting for those attacks rather than chipping away at its more durable areas. Once you defeat it, it lies there still for a while before disappearing, only to quickly re-emerge from the ground at full health and continue kicking your ass. I beat this boss in only a handful of tries without too much struggle, but it was only on my successful kill that I realized you're meant to do a visceral attack to its face while it's lying there after you deplete its health bar to take a chunk off of its health bar when it respawns, and doing that made all the difference to the outcome of the battle. It cuts down the time by quite a bit. It has 2 resurrections, but it doesn't really evolve its moveset between phases, so if you can maintain your aggression and not run into bleed thorns, you'll remove this weed without too much hassle. Make sure that you do, as it'll give us a surprise tool that'll help us later. Number 10, Meta, Mother of Fingers. My first thought when I walked into this boss room was, damn, that is one ugly looking bitch. She, or at least I'm assuming it's a she, was the third to last boss I beat, and I was at blessing level 19, hence why I didn't struggle too much against her. She killed me the least amount of times out of any Remembrance boss on this list, not for lack of trying mind you. Her moveset is quite hard to predict given she resembles no creature previously known to God or man. Bloodborne would welcome her with open arms. She's got slams from her front hands and she can fire several kinds of lasers, nothing we haven't seen before. The most annoying attacks she has involve the 1,000 fingers she has on her sides. It's hard to roll through every single one of her oversized digits when she starts charging or sticking them out. Her hitboxes aren't bad, but they may be wider than you're expecting. The obvious goal is to attack her weird chest area without running through every attack like a reckless idiot, and I happened to miss the second part of that memo. My damage output was high enough to warrant the risk. Phase 2 of this fight doesn't up the difficulty by any notable margin, it's just more different lasers and AoEs, nothing you can't tank if you have enough blessings. She also has relatively low poise, so my Colossal Greatsword was staggering her more often than not. She feels perfectly fair for an Elden Ring boss, maybe a tad on the easy side due to my high level of blessings. Number 9, Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame. Oh wow, he's literally me. No, really, my character was the Lord of Frenzied Flame.
I found you, faker!
The intro to this boss is like nothing else we've ever experienced in this series, beating up a nearly defenseless crippled man with an ordinary health bar. Emphasis on nearly defenseless, he can mount you and scream frenzy right into your face, but if you die to this phase of the boss, how the hell did you even get here? The introductory cutscene is awesome. Facing off against the same almighty firehead you can eventually become in the ending is an intimidating prospect, and Midra delivers on that concept in a fair and fun way. His spear attacks are nothing we haven't seen before, especially considering the other spear wielder in this DLC. They're easily readable, he doesn't have a combo longer than 5 hits, and at blessing level 18 he doesn't two-shot you. Trust me, that last part is a surprise, and it's a pleasant one. As you might expect, the Madness attacks are what you need to look out for. He spews Frenzied Flame from his head in multiple different ways and even in AoE form, which builds your Madness meter very quickly, Madness being similar to Frenzy from Bloodborne. Madness will really kill you, the damage output isn't that high, but it will hold you in place for a moment after you suffer the effects, and that's all the time Midra needs to land the final hit. But this doesn't feel unfair. Despite being a man of madness, Midra is a fun and fair boss. That was a very pleasant change compared to throwing myself against the brick walls that are the DLC's super bosses. Don't worry, we'll get there soon. Number 8, Putrescent Knight. This spooky horseman is a visually disturbing boss and a fun fight as long as you're aware of his quirks. He wields a cleaver type weapon and he slams it down in both normally timed and delayed attacks and has a lot of long slashy combos. It's not that hard to figure out their dodge timings once you've seen it a couple times, but the sheer length of these combos amplifies the chances you'll slip up, and one slip up will likely lead to a death. In an unexpected and freaky twist, he can lunge at you by jumping off of his horse, at which point the two of them will double team you for a set amount of charges, which is a cool idea. I'm bad at iframing charge attacks that come straight at me, but timing my dodges to avoid the horse wasn't impossible by any means. Helps that he comes at you from a slight angle. Putrescent Knight can also use Frost Breath against you, including 3 waves that come one after the other. I frame the first 2 with forward dodges and jump over the last one forward, and yes, your direction does matter. While this boss can be very dangerous if he decides to chain long combo after long combo and really give you a chance to fight back, I found him to give me enough openings to deal good damage and enough generosity to actually let me play the game I bought, instead of just dodge 2024 edition. Number 7, Romina, Saint of the Bud. Walking into this boss arena was a surprise. Of all the bosses in this DLC, I wasn't prepared for a giant insect with a woman attached to it, though given From Software's history, perhaps this was a foolish notion. Of course, you'll be dealing with 2 kinds of attacks, those of the insect and those of Romina's spear. The spear will build Scarlet Rot with each hit, but the amount it inflicts is relatively low, so it's more of a background detail than anything, unless you drag out the fight or if you get hit by her grab. That attack is guaranteed to give you Scarlet Rot, but I was using health regen as one half of my Wondrous Physic, so they practically cancelled each other out. The body's attacks are much more erratic. The jump and slam attacks do solid damage if you time the dodging even slightly wrong, which I did a lot, because of course I did. It rolls around, it spins, it behaves roughly as you'd expect a centipede to, with both ends being equally dangerous. Things get dicier in Phase 2 when she grows larger, prettier wings. That was a surprise, and not an entirely unpleasant one. She can now leave particles in the air after some combos or as its own unique attack, and naturally, these things explode. Even seeing this for the first time, I knew that I wasn't meant to stand in the sparkle dust, so you should have no problems. The aerial moves gave me more trouble than anything else, but overall, Romina wasn't a particularly troublesome boss, only taking me around 10 tries, especially compared to what came before and what came after. For the record, I think I was around Blessing level 10, so I think having around half the Erdtree fragments is fair for taking on a boss I'd consider the halfway point of this DLC. Number 6, Divine Beast Dancing Lion. For the first proper boss in this DLC, Divine Beast Dancing Lion wastes no time telling you to go away and get more blessings. I didn't listen and spent an hour fighting him at Blessing level 3, eventually triumphing in what was a very challenging yet very satisfying battle. My stubborn attitude with this DLC didn't last. As expected of 2 guys wearing a lion suit, this boss has some of the most erratic attacks I've ever seen. It took me quite a while to grow confident in dodging his charges and grab attack, and the fog breath remained a constant annoyance, if not one that was ever too threatening. Of course, every mistake I made shaved off a solid 40 to 70% of my health, so I was running through that fog wall a lot. If I'd had more blessings, the boss would have been a lot less tanky and it would have hit a lot less hard. So I'm trying to judge it off of moveset alone and imagining what it would have been like compared to the other bosses if I hadn't have been a stubborn fool. Phase 2 of this boss is simultaneously awesome and annoying. This Divine Beast must have been friends with Kujata, because we have a tri-disaster on our hands with 3 different elemental modes. Wind mode packs tornadoes, ice mode packs shockwaves, frost breath and frost buildup, and lightning brings constant roll interrupting instantaneous airstrikes, fast breath attacks that take out at least half your health bar, and pressure that prevents you from fighting him for several seconds as you desperately scramble to survive and heal. In case you can't tell, lightning mode is the hardest and wind mode is a breather by comparison. 9 times out of 10, the beast will start out in lightning lion mode for phase 2, then swap between all of them periodically, which is a really cool mechanic. It takes a while to learn the roll timings and tells of every move of every mode, considering he won't use ice or wind as much as lightning, and he's still coming after you with his powerful melee attacks in the meantime, but there's nothing here that's blatantly unfair or impossible to avoid. and I consider the lion a solid challenge. Again, I beat him at blessing level 3 just by being stubborn enough not to quit, though I'd recommend taking his advice and going to get more fragments. It'll make him more fun and you less dead. Number 5, Relena, Twin Moon Knight. And this is the moment I took my own advice. After slamming my head against the impossible wall that was Relena at blessing level 4, I ran away to collect those fragments and came back at level 7. I know I've been mentioning the blessings a lot, but they are fundamental to the difficulty of this DLC, and therefore of the bosses. That being said, Relena isn't only hard due to my negligence, her moveset is nuts. Malenia now has a rival for the best swordswoman in Elden Ring, because Relena just does not stop attacking. She wields 2 swords, and each of her arms have individual Ultra Instinct, because they don't think, they just move, individually of the other. Her combos are flowing and graceful, and they do not end nearly as quickly as you'd expect or like. At the very least, I learned to read and recognize the startups of her combos and dodged the rest of the attacks nearly on instinct, even though I got clipped more times than I'd like to admit, so just watch the footage and witness my shame. She has 2 sets of homing soul swords, which are pretty cool. She has giant sword swings, which deal half your health and damage but have fair wind-ups for you to recognize, and phase 2 wreaths her blades in magic and flame respectively, giving her fire after effects to half of her attacks and magic waves to the other half. Her triple moon strike is a pretty cool attack. The first time I saw it, I died and got mad, but every other time I remembered Elden Ring has a jump button. 3 jumps and you successfully dodge the attack and get a decent punish window. Relena is a pretty good knight type fight who feels a little too extensive with her combos, but once you don't get 2-shot, she feels a lot more fair and a lot more fun, and she's more than worthy to bring in the top 5 hardest bosses in the DLC. From this point on, I fought every boss with an appropriate level of Erdtree blessings, so the difficulty is purely on their ridiculous movesets, not my exploration incompetence. Number 4, Commander Gaius. Fuck this guy. Yep, we're starting off like that. Commander Gaius is my least favorite boss in the DLC. Any boss with this Commander battle theme is destined to be a bad fight. He's just like me, as in he rides an animal and he's an asshole. Gaius' boar has the hitbox of the Genshin Impact missing person poster, as in, it's got way more range than you think and it'll drive you to utter madness. His charges are hard to avoid by running, iframing or double jumping, and that's only one attack. He fights like a tree sentinel, swinging around a larger than reasonable weapon, but these attacks have been done to death by the copy-pasted horsemen throughout the Lands Between in the base game, so we can deal with those. They aren't the problem. The problem is everything else. He's got gravity magic, spear thrust magic blasts, his boar can slam its body down or kick backwards, and these attacks all come faster or slower than you think they reasonably should. Look at this bitch, he thinks he's Radahn. He can move faster than Torrent, he can 2-shot you and your mount, and despite being at a reasonable blessing level, he felt unreasonably tanky to me. I only won in my successful kill because he realized how much of a bad boss he is and just stood still while I put him out of his misery. It took a while, so he had ample time to recover, so I'm not too sure what happened here, but hey, game glitches are inevitable. A win is a win. And during a previous attempt, I was 1 hit away from beating him before he bullshitted his way into killing me, so I'll be happy to take this victory. Gaius just feels janky to fight and I hate him. Get him off of my screen. Number 3, Mesmer the Impaler. The best boss in the DLC, Mesmer is the poster boy of this expansion, with some lucky buyers even being able to receive 18 inches of him. That being said, he's only the boss of the finale of Act 2, and doesn't directly play much of a role in the events of the story. We kill him because he's in our way, and we need to burn some thorns. Sound familiar? However, unlike the fire giant, Mesmer is fantastic. He's a skilled spearman who wields fire as well. He always opens with a fire kick, with an obvious sign for when you need to roll, which is your chance to get a guaranteed punish and a good start to the fight. From that point on, it's a simple case of reading and patience. When you're wielding a slower weapon like I was, never be sure his attack combos are actually over. He'll pause for a moment after some spear strikes, luring you into attack, only to reveal actually he's not done with this combo, and then he impales you. It's sneaky, but totally fair. It feels like my fault when I screw up. The safe spots to attack are obvious if you're willing to wait for them. His other attacks of note include his 4-piece combo where he lunges across the arena, then follows up with a multi-thrust burst. I found rolling forwards into that attack was the most reliable way to avoid all of the hits. Then time your rolls apart slightly further than you think in order to avoid the follow-up spear throw and erupting spears from the ground. It takes a lot of time to learn his moveset, and to stop spam rolling because he'll punish that quickly and firmly, but it's a wonderful time. Learning this moveset brought back memories of fighting Gale or Malenia, except Mesmer has no waterfowl dance attack to strike fear into your heart. At least, not yet. Phase 2 reveals Mesmer has been feeling a little snaky. He now has serpentine attacks as well as even more potential follow-ups to his combos, but they're all very learnable. It's just the same pattern you've been following for the rest of the fight. Only attack when you're truly sure you're safe. The only gripe I have is the 6 snake strike attack in phase 2, indicated by a very damaging AoE, and then, well, 6 snakes striking you, followed by a finishing spear throw. Surviving it can feel like a matter of luck, because if you get clipped by one snake, you're likely to get clipped by the rest, and promptly killed. However, he's set to do this attack at a certain HP threshold, so you can prepare for it and act accordingly. All in all, Mesmer is a fantastic fight. He'd have been worthy of final boss status in both challenge and quality, and we can add him to From Software's catalogue of all-time great fights. Number 2, Bale the Dread. The first time I heard about Bale in this DLC was when I found a crazy guy by the side of the road screaming his head off. Turns out he had every right to be screaming. Bale the Dread is a new contender for one of the hardest dragon bosses in the entire franchise, right up there alongside Medea and Placidusax, probably worthy of the top spot. I found this man and fought this man at blessing level 18, and it went up to 19 by the time I beat him, but not having maxed out blessings was the least of my worries. My weapon just was not up to the task. It felt like I was doing too little damage and I could barely hit him in his head due to it being slightly out of my attack reach, and that's also the only available lock-on point. He also hits super hard with varied attacks, but at this point, water is wet. That's every boss in the DLC. In phase 2, he grows new wings and proceeds to employ aerial attacks, such as Fire Breath and powerful slams. It's a well-constructed moveset with the damage numbers you'd expect from a beast like this. I was surprised to find out that his cut-off leg was not in fact a weak point, but I guess all the damage already got dealt to that spot, so he's built up some tolerance. Now, I tried many times to beat Bale with the same build I beat every other boss on the list so far with. I even got him down to half health on my first attempt, but it just wasn't working beyond that. As a result of this, and also the final DLC boss, I ended up respeccing my build to one more familiar to me, the stats of which allowed me to use a handy little weapon I'd picked up earlier in the DLC, the Ancient Dragon Hunter's Katana. This thing, apart from a strange R1 moveset, is awesome. It has anti-dragon properties, and it has an awesome Ash of War attack that nullifies any difficulty I had hitting his head because now I have a projectile. Now that I had a weapon that could actually damage Bale properly, I was making better progress, but was still a tad frustrated at the difficulty. At this point, Bale was the final boss I needed to beat before I could begin scripting this video, and I'd already betrayed my own pride before this point in the DLC. So I decided to treat Bale like Yhorm the Giant and did an NPC questline. That crazy man by the side of the road turned out to be a dragon hunter called Igon, and he was happy to help me take down this bastard dragon. In fact, he's very happy to do so. Is this cheating my ranking rules? Technically yes. Do I care? Not really. The battle is much more fun with him there anyway. Igon hams it up to a lovely degree, and actually provides some help, mainly by drawing aggro for a few seconds and by launching smaller attacks that help break Bale's poise, giving me a chance to get in a visceral attack or two. Combine this with the awesome attacks of the katana, and the fact that I was actively learning his moveset, and within 7 tries of me and Igon, Bale was slain, and it felt good. It's like fighting Yhorm the Giant with Sigurd, it just feels right, and I'll admit, it's the only thing that made him possible for my current skill level. I'll beat him on my own one day, but that day is not today, and as such, Bale is an opponent of legendary difficulty. However, he's not number 1, because he's only 1 out of 2 bosses I needed to break my rules for. As for the other one? Well, let's go see what's up with them, shall we? Number 1, Radahn, Promised Consort, and Radahn, Consort of Miquella. I once said, I wish we could fight Radahn when he was in his prime. I'd like to officially retract that statement. Radahn is brought back, not as himself, but as a puppet. The backstory behind this boss is twisted, and proves that Miquella is an absolute snake bent on world domination. I've played Final Fantasy XVI, I know how this dance goes, it's time to kill a wannabe god. Except this time we don't have the power of 8 to 10 gods in our body to even the odds, we're still just a tarnished. And this rebuilt Radahn is about to show us exactly why he was considered the strongest demigod. Even without Leonard to aid him, Radahn is a brutal warrior. His sword slashes come fast and they combo with variety, mainly this 3 to 5 hit piece that has 3 different startups and finishes that need to be avoided in different ways. His gravity magic persists too, with a long charge, a meteor toss with funky hitboxes, and a really annoying attack where he quickly sucks you in and performs a shockwave that you cannot iframe. You need to dodge the initial suck or just sprint away like a madman once you're caught. There's also Blood Flame, because this is Radahn in Mog's dead body, because Miquella is a bastard. Ultimately, I love the first phase of this fight. It's certainly hard, but it feels fair. Radahn gives you windows to attack relative to your weapon speed and damage, his attacks are all learnable, and there's a proven way to deal with everything except some janky meteor hitboxes. It's my second favourite moveset in the DLC to fight. If this was the whole battle, it'd be S tier for sure. And then phase 2 happens. You don't fight Radahn phase 2, you experience phase 2, because phase 2 is just bullshit. It's one of the few times I will confidently say, hand on heart, that a Soulsborne boss is stricken with over-designed, inflated, artificial difficulty. Miquella floats down onto Radahn's shoulders in the boss cutscene, much like a boss from earlier in the series, and begins assisting with holy magic. Most often, this will take the form of a humongous holy nuke that you can only avoid if you begin sprinting immediately, otherwise you'll be losing a chunk of your health. From there, Radahn continues fighting as normal, but his moves are now all infinitely more problematic due to one factor: the light of the gods. There are now bursts of light coming down instantly from the sky that clip you for chip damage, interrupting your dodging and healing, and giving Radahn more range and damage with his attacks. There are way too many of these beams, and they're the reason this phase is stupid. Radahn now gets various mirage slashes, with several weak phantom attacks leading to one strong real attack. He's got more follow-ups to his existing combos, and all of these new attacks are perfectly acceptable. They're learnable, they're fair, they're fun. It's just those stupid holy beams that make them nigh impossible to handle. If it wasn't for those, I'm confident I could beat Radahn, but that's not the world that we live in. It just feels like artificial tacked on difficulty. Hey, remember the Erdtree avatar from the start of this ranking? This next attack is why we killed him. Radahn can jump on you for a hug, only for Miquella to rub his gross slimy hands all over you and try to brainwash you to his side. You can resist once, but the second time is a unique instant kill. Using Miquella's great rune we got from the avatar will reset this count, removing the threat of an unavoidable death, and turning the grab into more of an inconvenience. I was at blessing level 18 and then 19 fighting this boss, and I couldn't even get close to killing him. Phase 2 was too much. It didn't help that my weapon did large amounts of holy damage, which Radahn happens to resist in phase 2. Thanks to this and my patience running thin, I did something drastic.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
Yep, I respec this character into the same build as my first ever Elden Ring character. Arcane Dexterity with Rivers of Blood. I fully upgraded the weapon and I even brought along a friend. Myself. Yep, Radahn was the boss that made me break my own rules. Mimic tier joins the battle. It didn't feel good to throw away my pride like this, but I just wanted to beat this boss. I was having a terrible time. With the faster attacks, the bleed build-up, and the Mimic to provide momentary distractions, I started having fun with the boss again, getting closer and closer to victory until I finally won. And that rush felt incredible. Even though I used a Spirit Ash, I feel proud of myself for beating this thing. And anyone who managed to do the same, no matter how you did it, you should feel proud as well. Radahn, Consort of Miquella, is the hardest boss in Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, the hardest boss in the Soul series, and the hardest boss I've ever fought in gaming history. I'd say all hail Miquella, but I'm more than happy to let that cheap manipulative bastard fade into the annals of history where he belongs. And with that, it's finally all over. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is complete, minus all the random NPC bosses I didn't get around to killing, but that's what the future is for. I loved the DLC for the most part. The story was twisted and intriguing like a From Software game should be. The world was beautiful and the new toys we got to play with were a lot of fun. I'm not a fan of the need for Erdtree blessings, but that's an issue I acknowledge comes down to my own preferences in game design, not a flaw in the game itself. The bosses were mostly fantastic too. Once I'd leveled my blessings, I was able to get into the Dark Souls routine of studying their moves, learning when I could attack and heal, and enter into a satisfying dance with them, proving my skills superior through repetition and hard work. The exceptions were Commander Gaius, who I hate, and Radahn's Phase 2, which just drags down the entire fight in my opinion. But hey, that leaves 9 fantastic bosses I'll be happy to replay and master in the future. This DLC definitely lived up to my expectations, and if this is the end of new Elden Ring content, this game has certainly finished strong, and it will enter the history books as a masterpiece. Thank you, Miyazaki, you lovable madman. And on that note, thank all of you for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy. I know the timing isn't perfect, but having to actually beat this very hard DLC in between training and work shifts while also trying my hardest not to summon made me take a while. But hey, when am I ever timely with my videos? With this, the Elden Ring difficulty ranking saga is complete, and we can move on to my next project, which will be one of the Yu-Gi-Oh variety. So if that sounds like a bit of you, keep an eye on my channel over the next few weeks. I'm hoping for an August release date. If you have thoughts on the Elden Ring bosses, leave them all down in the comment section below. I'd love to get the discussion going. If you want to criticize me for using a summon on Bale or mimic tier on Radahn, please know that I acknowledge it goes against the get good nature of the community, but I wanted to start actually enjoying the DLC again, and I was on a time limit, so I allowed myself to use more tools for those two fights. If it makes you feel any better, I do plan to go back and beat them solo in the future. If you feel like I've earned it, please leave a like and subscribe, it really helps out my channel. And maybe consider checking out my Patreon if you want to help these videos come out a little faster. With all that said, we're done here. Thank you once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.